Hey, Molly, thank you. Hey, good morning and afternoon, everyone. This is Don Drury. I wanted to just thank everyone for taking some time and welcome them to today. I'm actually the CEO of the Six Sigma Management Institute and wanted just to take a brief moment to give you all a bio of Dr. Harry, just to make sure that we know who he is and how he's helped the industry over time. Dr. Harry has been widely recognized and cited in many publications as the principal architect of Six Sigma and the world's leading authority within the field. His book, entitled Six Sigma, The Breakthrough Management Strategy, revolutionized the world's corporations, and been on the bestseller list of the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and Amazon. He has consulted to many of the world's top CEOs and has been a featured guest on such TV programs as the NBC show Power Lunch. In addition, he has been recognized and distinguished by many top governmental, professional, and academic institutions for his groundbreaking work and contribution. And we're very lucky and blessed to have him today. So having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and get him started, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Harry.
Hey, thanks, Don. I appreciate you today. And hearing this, and also thank Power Steering for hosting this. They were the primary impetus behind this. To appreciate what we're going to be talking about today, we got to get a little heritage on it, a little history. If we go back to the early 80s, the focus of Six Sigma was on defect reduction and primarily product defect reduction as well as design. Well, that evolved over time due to some experiences that I had had when I was running an operation for Assea Brown Bavaria in Europe. At that time, ABB was the largest corporation in the world. And how to manage all that was a major issue. And one of the things we opted for was to go with Six Sigma. But it became very quickly apparent that we could not use just defect data to evaluate and understand quality and process capability. The European way of business looks at money. And so I went back and, along with a couple of my peers, and restructured to look at money. And then that's what we focused on at Allied Signal and General Electric. And, of course, Jack Welch is the one that made the money focus really pop. We had some very good success on Wall Street with it, and it kind of spread and become what it is today. But what's happening today is this. We're seeing a shift again. All the leading indicators from the big annual CEO surveys, Gartner, Wall Street Journal, Business Week, all of them, have found that in history, back a few years, our CEO ranks were focused on cost reduction, bottom line improvement. And now the emphasis is, with a recovering economy and lessons learned in the past, that we've got to focus on growth and not through merger and acquisition. Mergers and acquisitions, M&As as they're called, hasn't worked out too well, and they're doing very few of them today. The emphasis on growth today is organic growth, which translates to increasing sales, which basically boils down to having a superior value proposition. We see right now a lot of products sell based on price. Low price wins. That's the old joke about government trading. Well, that's no longer true. The nature of the economy, everything that's happening, value has become a central figure in the eyes of the senior executives of our largest corporations in how to create it, how to sustain it, and how to extend it as a mechanism that the company should focus on. So defect rates have taken a back seat. Even money has taken a back seat, where value now has come to the forefront. So how do we create value? And in specifically what we're interested in, how do we increase the velocity of delivered value? Let me say that again. How do we increase the velocity of delivered value to the customer? Now, whereas defects, all that was kind of customer focused, and the whole internal money thing was kind of provider focused, what we're going to see today is that the value creation model focuses on both. In order to have good business, you've got to have both the provider and the customer being satisfied. So we're going to cover quickly today, just touching the mountaintops of what value is, what value creation is, and what the implications of that would be in service, engineering, manufacturing, and so on. So I'm going to progress here. And the first thing I want to talk about is what is quality. Well, the classical definition of quality, if you look back in Duran's books, the handbook, and all the books of old times from the 50s and 60s, it started as being understood basically, as it is today in ASQC, simple conformance to standards. Well, just because you conform to standards does not mean it represents good value to the customer and provider. It might represent good value to the customer, but not necessarily the provider. And remember, it takes two to have good business. So we define quality now as the realization of value entitlement. And we're going to be focusing on those two words. I'm going to get the first one out of the words. A lot of people say, Mike, what do you mean entitlement? Well, entitlement is your rightful level of expectation. Remember, in this world, you never get what's fair. You only get what you negotiate. The idea of fairness is determined through negotiation, just like between a provider and a customer, in terms of performance specifications, what they're expected to pay for that, etc. So entitlement is the rightful level of expectation in the value proposition that the customer receives and the side benefits that the provider is able to enjoy. So what is business quality? Oh, this is interesting. It's a state in which the customer and provider, notice it doesn't say or, and provider, realize the mutual and gratifying, and the key word there is mutual and gratifying. So we have to have a state of being in which the customer and the provider are enjoying mutually a gratifying exchange of value in every aspect of the business relationship. Now that forms the total value proposition. For example, if you're only enjoying it in the quality aspect, well, what about on-time delivery? So you'd be missing out on that. Quality doesn't consider that. Well, let's go dig a little bit deeper. What is value? Simply stated, value is bang per buck. The amount of benefit you get per dollar. I'm going to pop back here and ask you a question. And think about it for a moment. In your work in Six Sigma, Lean, etc., and your company, Are you about getting deeper into the business of quality, or are you concerned about the quality of your business? I'll say that again because that's a huge philosophical difference. Are you in the business of being in quality, or are you concerned about the quality of your business? Well, if you look back at conformance to standards, ASQ, all that, they're all about being in the business of quality. And Six Sigma is about being concerned about good quality of business. And we've defined that earlier on as good quality business is when the provider and customer have mutual and gratifying exchange of value. That's a good quality business. So it's much more holistic in its understanding. We're business focused. So the key is not to crank out black belts and everything that are better at quality. The key is getting the classic tools and everything focused on improving the quality of the business. And that's how you improve the overall value proposition. Well, quality in its simplest form, as I stated, is bang for the buck. You know, how much you're going to get for a dollar you spend. And we can reduce that to a simple heuristic equation. Now, I focus this as a heuristic equation. It's not derived. That value is equal to capability times your capacity over your cost. Now, this is the provider perspective. The customer perspective would be quality times quantity divided by price. But we'll stick over here with this one because that's what's on the screen right now. When we say capability, what are we talking about? We're talking about process capability. The capability to create defect-free product. What are we talking about when we talk about capacity? Capacity is the quantity of product that you could create. Now, another way to look at that is access. You want your customers to have access to your product. To have access, you've got to have capacity. Essentially the same thing. You divide that by cost. So let's do a quick little example in our head. Suppose that my capability on a process averages out to about, let's say 90%, 80%. We'll use 80%. And my capacity is 100. Be that 100 units, whatever the base is, and divided by the cost, the total cost. So if we take 80% times 100, that's 80. If the cost is $8, then the value is $10 per unit. That's the value. Now, when we study these, what happens to value is cost goes up. Well, value goes down. For a given capability and cost, as capacity decreases, what happens to value? It goes down. So really, to have a quality business, you have to have operating at a near entitlement level of your process capability, your system capacity, and minimal cost. So there's three things now that determine a quality business, not just conformance to standards, as it's historically been for so many years. Now, what's velocity? Velocity is a state change. It's the rate of change in something. So if I am in a certain condition, let's call it A, and I want to be at B, then the amount of time it takes for me to zap that gap, to close that gap, is my velocity. So when we look at this in terms of value creation, what's my baseline value and what's my goal and what's the amount of time it's taken me to get there? That's my rate of change. Now, Six Sigma at the business level is not about 3.4 defects per million and so on. It's about your rate of change. Specifically, Six Sigma is a 78% per year annualized rate of return, rate of improvement, no matter where your baseline starts. We have an example here. Here's a little graph that shows, in this case, DPMO, the corresponding velocity, your actual DPMO, and the velocity. So you'd have a velocity goal line and an actual line. The difference between the two is how well you're managing your quality, capacity, and cost. So this is a very powerful metric. It's a very useful metric. And it gives great insight to what's happening actually in the company as a totality. Whereas just looking at quality is insufficient anymore, worked at one time. Or just looking at cost, worked at one time. But now we got to look at several things simultaneously in order to effectively compete and bring about the best value proposition we can. Because we know that's the way to the competitive future. It's that simple. Well, when we talk about Six Sigma at the business level, if we start at time zero and we look at the improvement over 5 years, the difference between 4 and Six Sigma, that's 78% annualized rate of return. That's huge. That's an 1,800 times improvement over 5 years. Well, you're not going to get that kind of an improvement tweaking on the existing system. So what a high rate of return does for you, it forces the organization into a reevaluation in which the work gets done, not just tweak the existing process. And that requires innovation. It requires work in design, not just process. So if we look at a competitive edge, one of the things that we discover is that a 50% improvement rate, that's in the blue on the headers there, top headers. And we look at year 10, what that's saying is that you can jump from 4 sigma to 5.88 sigma in 10 years by employing and holding to a 50% rate of return. So there's a 4 sigma rate of return, a 5 sigma, a 6 sigma. And that's how we look at it from an executive point of view. Well, the little story that goes with that is pretty simple. There was this engineer, this MBA, and this supervisor that was out camping. And everything was going fine until a big bear come in the camp. and just started wreaking havoc. Well, the engineer and MBA took off running. But the supervisor sat trying to go through his knapsack. He was putting his sneakers on, his tennis shoes. And the executive yelled back and says, hey, well, come on, hurry up, get up here, forget those shoes. You can't outrun that bear. And the supervisor said, I know, I'm just going to outrun you. In other words, our goal may be Six Sigma. That's odds. The real goal is to achieve 5 and be on a 5 Sigma rate of improvement. If you can do that, you will capture any market in the world. Any market in the world. It's just that simple. Because it costs cheaper, you deliver fewer defects, and you give the customer greater access to your products and services. So that's really kind of a very quick overview about value creation, why it's important, and why it's a metric of the future that's coming. CEOs are now focused on that. It's growing in popularity. Their focus on the value proposition is now huge. In other words, we're shifting away from being in the business of quality to focusing on improving the quality of our business. So I would thank you very much today for your time. I hope this was of some meaning and value to you. And thanks, Power Steering, for hosting this.
Thank you.
Dr. Harry, thank you so much for your contribution to today's call. Molly wants to continue the ball rolling here. We'll have some time, hopefully, at the end for some question and answer.
Yep. Randy Clark, who's our Director of Six Sigma here at Power Steering, is going to take us through a quick demo, and then absolutely stay on the line because we will save about 10-15 minutes at the end for question and answer. Take it away.
Are there going to be any question and answers for me that we can do right now?
Sure there is.
Where there'll be questions around your software and function and all that. Maybe there's some general questions about definitions and value and that thing.
Absolutely. Everyone's on mute, all the attendees are, but everyone, if you have a question, please just put it in the question box and I'll go ahead and ask Dr. Harry. We'll give you a couple minutes to put those in the question and answer section.
Yeah, I didn't aim to interfere with the agenda, but it would seem more logical to keep them separated.
Well, as we're looking for questions, let me introduce myself. I've been with the company 11 years. My background is in continuous improvement. I actually led a Baldrige-based quality initiative at Whirlpool Corporation. I'm a 3-year Baldrige examiner. I'm involved in that process quite a bit, and I went to Pitney Bowes to start a Six Sigma deployment from the ground floor at Pitney, and that's where I bought Power Steering and used it to manage the deployment. So when I was asked to present here today, we've had a relationship with Dr. Harry now for about a couple years. We've worked together with other clients, and we're very proud to be sort of recognized as the go-to project and portfolio management tool that Dr. Harry recommends, and working with Dr. Harry has been great. So I think there's a couple questions up.
I just got one. Dr. Harry, how do you differentiate business value versus customer value?
Well, you differentiate customer and provider value. Customer and provider value taken together equals business value. Now that's a little different question than what is the par value of the company. in dollars and economic sense. What we're talking about is the value proposition between a customer and a provider. That's about the velocity of value, closing that gap. Does that help at all? I know it can be a little confusing at first, but when you kind of sit down and start thinking about it, you go, oh my God, it makes a lot of sense. Having a quality business is something totally different than having your people heavily involved in quality. A quality business is always making money. But a business that is just focused on quality may not necessarily be making money.
You mentioned before that that Jack Welch and GE was really the first to start looking at business value. How did that, I guess, come about?
Well, he and I had 2-3 conversations about it. And at the officers' meeting, that was one of the things that sold Jack on Six Sigma. One, that it was economically based, and two, that we weren't focused on getting them deeper into quality tools and everything else, but rather taking those same tools and applying them to improving business quality, not just product quality. There's many aspects to a business, as you would agree. There's accounting, there's conformance to GAAP, there are legal standards, et cetera, many of which are value added and some are not. And by studying your velocity of value and managing through that, you're actually managing the financial performance of your company. The key drivers for your company.
So it looks like we have one more question that came up. Are companies willing to integrate quality concepts with the business? Most organizations tend to look at quality performance as a checklist.
Okay, could you slow down and hit me with that again?
Sure. So are companies willing to integrate quality concepts with the business? Most organizations tend to look at quality performance as just a checklist.
Yes, and that's why, because they've got it associated with just defects. The executive mind only speaks 2 words, money and time. That's all they speak. Defects is not in their language. For example, if you go to an ASQ conference, a big one like the World Quality Congress, I know I did one year as a keynote speaker. I stopped and asked, how many in here hold the position Chief Executive Officer or President? There's probably about 1,400 people present. No hands went up. Well, how many operational VPs do we have in here? Only 1 or 2 hands went up. Most of the C-suites have never even heard of ASQ. I deal with these folks every day. And they've never heard of ASQ. They have no clue, other than it's about inspection or quality control. And they say, well, that's something we need, but it's at the bottom of our list, which is essentially a checklist. Or, oh, we use Baldrige for that. Or we follow ISO 9000. They have a different perspective. Whereas in the quality ranks and the quality fields, they're a little offended by that kind of a perspective. And one of the reasons why is that the quality field is out of step with the business field.
Great insight. It looks like that's all the questions that we've had come through right now for that portion of the presentation.
Okay.
So I'll keep an eye on it though, and if any other ones come up at the end, I will definitely let you know.
By the way, I wanted to say this. I normally don't endorse products and so on like I have yours, but after having had the chance to look at it, I have found that it's the best one out there, hands down, for integrating the concept of value creation, velocity of value, in terms of project management. And I personally just really like it, how easy it is to use and everything. I think it's a wonderful piece of software. And I've gotten to know most all pieces of these project management software out there. And I think yours is balanced just right for the world of Six Sigma, because on the one hand, we don't need a D9 caterpillar to move a plant, to move a rose bush. On the other hand, we need something strong enough to move it. And I think the scale and scope of power steering is right in line, and its flexibility with where the field of Six Sigma, where I'm taking the field of Six Sigma. And I think another thing is this: a lot of quality practitioners have got to realize I'm moving the field of Six Sigma not through quality professionals, but I move it through my meetings with analysts on the street, with CEOs, etc.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so why don't we
All righty.
Take a look at what power steering can do to assist you in your efforts at in a continuous improvement or Six Sigma deployment. When I started this out, I wanted to just introduce myself, and Molly reminded me, said, make sure you say something interesting about yourself. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, what can I review here? Well, my background a little bit. I grew up with a dad who was in the NFL, was a football player with the Browns, blocked for Jim Brown, Leroy Kelly, was a head coach of the 49ers and the Detroit Lions, and with the Miami Dolphins, assistants in the 70s. That's me right there up the top left as a little guy. But one last photo I'll show you from the perfect season, which is one of the classic ones, is my dad keeping Shula from getting thrown out of the game there in a tantrum. So to get into power steering, right, a little bit about what power steering is meant to do, and the value proposition here is really starts from understanding the strategy that you're looking to achieve, setting objectives and goals around the velocity of change and what you need to achieve and what time frames, through the execution of projects to produce and report and roll up those results. And what power steering provides is a system of management around that process. Three core areas that it provides for you is visibility into your portfolios. Who's doing what? Where are they? What's going on? Getting your arms around understanding your deployment, your projects, and your execution of those projects. The next area is aligning those projects with the right objectives, goals, KPIs, if you will, ensuring that the projects you select is the right work that's going to provide value, right? Either improve capacity, improve quantity, quality. And then finally, providing at the tools level, at the project manager level, tools to collaborate, to have DMAIC workflows, PDCA workflows, lean event workflows that are built into the tool that can assist the project manager in managing those projects. And you can see there what the experts say about the value that most organizations get from this. And what our customers tell us, the Johnson Controls put in power steering, they reduced their reporting costs by 50% because they didn't have to run around getting and gathering information. It's all there in one place. Poly One was able to increase the value of the projects they were producing. They were selecting better projects, executing those projects better. And then finally, Shaw Industries was able to reduce overall cycle time on average across their projects. So you could get a limited number of project managers, belts, green belts, black belts, getting through projects more quickly, and they're of higher value, and your reporting costs are less. You can see sort of the value there. So let's go in and look at a tool very quickly, and we'll sign in here as an executive from that visibility point of view. It's a web-based application. Takes me to my home page. My home page as an executive aggregates for me key information about my deployment. What is it I want to know? I want to know, are we producing savings, right? So if I drill into this chart over on the top left, we can roll up information across the portfolio of projects where we've set an annual target of $12.2 million in cost reduction. That target is made up of targets set at individual units or businesses. We can see our forecast is a little short of our target, and all of that negative variance is in one functional area. Right? Why is that area different? What can we do about it? And providing visibility to executives, deployment leaders, master black belts, and executive master black belts, right, to take action on this. Note as well, we're able to measure any real elements on the tool. So how many projects do we have? We currently have 30 active projects. It's less than what we'd like to have. The number of issues and problems we have in projects, and the training certification levels in terms of how many black belts have we trained, how many green belts. When we look at velocity of value, right, if I go into one of our strategies and how we align with that strategy, here I'm pulled up our customer satisfaction strategy, where we started with a 4% top box loyalty response to our quarterly survey organization. Well, that's the baseline. What is the velocity of change in which we must perceive in order to get value and create value for the customer and for us? Well, we've set that velocity as a target, and then power steering will remind us with emails, alerts, and notifications that it's time to enter either the data or pull that data from existing systems. So you can see as well, we've set some improvement goals around on-time delivery in the call center, average handle time, ease of doing business metrics, all tracking towards change over time, and how are we achieving that? Now, second question is then, what are we doing to move those needles, right? And what are the projects that are aligned with those? And if we drill into any of those active projects, we want to know, show me those active projects. I click on it. It'll take me to a report which fills out, which basically reports for me, here are the active projects aligned, who's working on those, and where they are in the organization. And we can even drill down from there to find out more about what's happening on those projects. So direct alignment with strategy, understanding how you're impacting the goals of the organization. If we look at this from a project point of view, I'm going to switch over users to a project manager, a black belt, and I'm going to log in here as Michelle, who's a black belt, and this is Michelle's home page. She logs into power steering. It's a very different look and feel. She's configured it to show what's important to her. She's got 2 projects that she's currently working on, the status of those projects. She's also submitted a couple ideas into the system. You can see that one is awaiting approval and one's been returned to her for more information. Right? So power steering not only acts as a project management tool, but also an ideation tool. Submit ideas, capture opportunities, evaluate those, score them, and then pick the right best projects for the organization. Now, when I start a project in power steering, very simple. I go to the Add button over on the left, and I say I want to pick a project. Right? So I'm going to select a project. The first step here is, what type of project are you going to manage? This is where we work with our clients, the consultants working with those clients around methodologies, tools, and templates. And we build those into power steering so that if I select my DMAIC template, it provides for me all the information, the charter information, that's required in that template. So what's my problem statement? The scope of the work. If I want a quick reminder of what a charter problem statement contains, I've got online help where I can just hover over that area to remind the project manager what a good scope statement looks like. Now these fields are configurable, and we'll work with other clients to capture their charters, their key information around when they're working a project. So let's say we've created a project. Let's go into one here, this decreased container cost project. Here what we see is a summary page for this project. And the project has a DMAIC workflow, define, measure, analyze, right? And when you are done with the work in the define phase, you'll submit for approval to your master black belt, deployment leader, whoever those individuals, the project sponsor, could be one person, could be a team of people to approve it to move it to the next phase. Right? So that's all managed with email alerts and notifications through gate approvals. But in this project, we see all of the work and elements that need to be completed in the define phase. Right? And several of the things that I need to do is my SIPOC. It's in a proposed. I haven't completed it. I've completed my other deliverables here. And one of the things that we've done is working with Six Sigma Management Institute is link and integrate to their training delivery. So if I look at, if I'm doing my SIPOC, I might link and say, well, show me training materials from MindPro offered by Six Sigma Management Institute, right? And here's a module embedded on SIPOC with Dr. Harry.
In this module, we're going to be...
All right, so just-in-time sort of reference material to MindPro, which also includes a complete certification testing methodology as well. So as a project manager, I can have reference to those, or I can even go to my important link area and reference all of those, the MindPro from a very high level, so I can go search for the materials that I'm looking for. Last key area that we'll look at here is how do we capture the financials, right, on the project. So if I open up my financial summary, we want to know what is the forecast versus the target plan for improvement around this project. If I open up that financial forecast, what we'll see is an Excel-like template with line items that capture the details and line items that the client is concerned with. So these are configurable elements where I'm looking here to understand what are my total hard dollar savings. That's made up of things like SG&A, cost of goods, inventory, accounts receivable, etc. So all of those roll up into my total hard savings. I might also have FTE impact and then other costs or investment that I might have in order to get that savings to net my net benefit on my project of 548 there at the bottom. One of the key things that this does for you is assure that these are reviewed and approved. So I can change these numbers, right? I might go in and say, oh, there's actually this is going to be $9,000 in May that we saved there. But I can't change anything from April back. And what you'll note is that April back has been reviewed and approved by Doug, the financial rep, which is a unique authority to review those assumptions. And these are what we want to do is prevent what we call PPDs. If you ever heard of PPDs, we call those PowerPoint dollars, right? They're great presentations, PowerPoints with all these great savings, and they never hit the bottom line. They're maybe overzealous exaggerations of the value of that project. And what Power Steering provides you with is a way of reviewing and locking those numbers so that when I report and roll up those numbers, I know that I'm reporting real, verifiable numbers that are going to hit the bottom line. So from a project level point of view, I have the ability to collaborate, update my project, deliver on that, and accelerate the value of that project to the organization's bottom line. This is what we wanted to cover today in the tool. We'll open it back up for questions and answers, either for me or for Dr. Harry as questions have come up.
Hey, Randy, looks like we've got a question from you. Some really kind words from Dan attending the webinar. He said, power steering links everything together better than anything I've seen in my 15 years of Lean Six Sigma process improvement. Thank you, Dan, for those kind words.
Is that a question?
That was a comment to a pre-question. So you mentioned process map integration. How is that done? Is there a process modeling tool available as well?
Power steering is agnostic to the tools in which you use. So if I go back to that project, so if you're using Visio to manage and put process maps together, you're simply loading that Visio file to power steering, right? And if I look at the details on this, right, so here's a project with its deliverables viewed, so let's go in and zoom on those. So here's a picture of the process you're engaged in, maybe a picture of the plant floor, the organization, or the product line in which you're working on. So you're just simply loading that to the tool. Let's go through a couple of these other ones, right? Here might be a VOC translation tool. We don't provide the tool to do that, but you can upload any organizational tool. So so that's basically we're agnostic to whatever tools the client is currently using. Okay. Other questions?
Someone asked about using power steering in a startup environment. Randy, do you want to talk a little bit about target customers or the best organizations?
Yeah, startup actually is a very good question, because the way in which we always recommend you sort of attack implementing power steering is using a crawl, walk, run approach. Keep it simple in the crawl phase. Only turn on functionality that you absolutely require. Power steering is a very powerful tool. It's a lot of capability, resource management, Gantt charting, right? If you're not that mature and we don't need that, you can just simply turn that functionality off. It's available to you when you're ready for it. And so what we see is with young organizations that are starting out, it is nice to have the tool up and running, configured simply, and we're training folks how to manage projects, how to deliver on a DMAIC plan or methodology, and you're using the tool at the same time. Using power steering as a workflow, as a reminder engine, as a way of collaborating, instead of waiting until 2 years down the road and then all of a sudden introducing a new tool where everybody's set in their ways. I've been doing this for 2 years, right? And we've been using spreadsheets and Lotus note reporting or whatever. It's very much a cultural shift to all of a sudden introduce the tool. So we do recommend, like, early on, it's great because you're sort of learning the process, you're learning, training, and getting introduced to the tool at the same time.
Great. We have one other that just came in. How are programs managed as sets of projects?
A good question is that a program in power steering is simply a higher level work item, right? So a program would be very much like a project, except that it would have projects that are nested underneath it. All of those, programs, a lot of our clients use this for, IT management, new product development projects. So for instance, a program might be something like implement SAP. It was a lot of work, a lot of projects, individual things as part of that major program. You put in the SAP program, and then you have all the descendant projects that are individual, can be assigned, and all of the information rolls up in terms of cost, effort, the impact to the highest level of that program.
That's great. Looks like that's all I have on my end. I think, Don, you wanted to share a few final words?
Yes, Molly, thank you. First of all, this was a very powerful session, and I think everybody should have some takeaways from this. And hopefully Dr. Harry, what he shared makes some sense, but there's obviously scratching the surface here. There's a lot more to that than what we provided. If you looked at the material, the date on it was 2006. And it's not that we're using old material at all. We wanted to show and demonstrate that really this has been around since at least that amount of time. And we're just now starting to bring this into the market in a different way. And it's going to be incredibly powerful. So that's important to recognize, that we're not using stale bait. It's just, it takes a long time. And one of the things I want to make sure people realize about Dr. Harry, he spends time in research and understanding things. And there's some people on this call, and Randy being one of them, to know who've had opportunities to interface with him through our Executive Master Black Belt program that we have. And he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't just fly from the seat of his pants. He kicks the tires and takes it to the, as he says, in the gnat's rear end. And that's the truth of it. It takes a while for that stuff to develop. So it's well developed. I want to offer, and we'll include this in an email as we send it out, some of the additional things that Dr. Harry has and stuff we're working on with Power Steering. But he has a blog called the Business Improvement Times, and that is an incredible resource that he has of white papers of things he's written. And we'll send out a follow-out that includes links to these different things. And there are some really cool things, as Randy had gave a very brief glimpse, that we're working on to perhaps integrate some of the SSMI, Dr. Harry's materials, into Power Steering to really make it a much more robust, not that it isn't on its own, but to add more value into what the users are doing with that. So we're very excited about working with Upland and Power Steering, and the future is very bright in what we're doing. And I encourage all of you all to follow up with the blog and some of the other stuff we'll share in a follow-on email, because you'll find there's great information there. So with that said, thanks everybody for your time today. That's it from our perspective from SSMI, and we're looking forward to interacting with you all again very soon. Thank you, Molly.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you all.
Thanks, Molly. Thank you, Dr. Harry.
Thanks, everyone. A follow-up email will go out over the next couple days with a link to the recording as well as the slide deck and any additional information Dr. Harry would like to include. So thank you all and have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you.